You're good to go? All right, let's do it. Good morning, everyone. Oh, hi, Morris. Morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order this morning at 9:05 a.m. Thank you for joining us this morning. In the true spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge all those who call this land home now and for thousands of years in the past. May we respect each other and find understanding together and recognize the benefits that this land provides to all of us. You have an agenda before you. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? John?
Did you want to bring that ASB one up right now? No, we'll do it. Okay.
You want to move it? You want to move it still?
Oh, sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So we moved the adopted agenda as presented.
Thank you, John. John has moved for the adoption of the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moving down, item C, adoption of minutes. You have been provided with the County Council meeting minutes from September 21st, 2023. Are there any errors, omissions, anything arising from the minutes? Claus.
I'll move the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Claus. Claus is moved for the adoption of the minutes of the County Council meeting September 21st, 2023 as presented. Any discussion? Call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We move down on our agenda. We do have a 9:15 here. However, there are some staff that have to get away, and I see Ron's here already this morning, so why don't we start with our delegations right off the hop. We have a service recognition this morning. Ron Spillman has been with the county for 43 years, so we're here to honor Ron today, and maybe with that I'll throw to Jeremy.
Thank you, Reeve Campbell. Please come forward, Ron. He cleaned himself up for today, because usually he's under a truck or solving one of our many public works problems. Ron has been...
Thank you very much, Ron. You know, on behalf of council, thank you for everything. We do. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, everyone. We can move down. Item E, subdivision applications. We have one subdivision application today. Subdivision application 2023-0-111. With that, I would throw to our Supervisor of Planning and Development, Hilary Jansen. Morning, Hilary.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Council. As mentioned, we just have the one subdivision for Council acting as the subdivision authority to review today. This application is to subdivide a 0.32 acre parcel in the hamlet of Shaughnessy. The current parcel is would be subdivided into equal parts, being 0.16 acres in size, but the dimensions would be 50 by 135. This exceeds the minimum lot size that we have in the Hamlet Residential District for a parcel within the hamlet of Shaughnessy. With that, I do believe everything else meets, or everything does meet the requirements of the county subdivision policies, but I'll let Steve go through the rest of the planning comments and the recommendation.
Good morning. This application in front of you, as mentioned, is a subdivision to split a lot into equal portions. The west lot contains an existing older dwelling that's been there quite some time, and a rear yard shed in the back, while the east lot that will be created is a vacant portion of land. It's the intent of the applicant to create a separate east lot title that will enable a new dwelling to be constructed in the hamlet. And then with the west lot containing the older existing dwelling, and at some future point then that older dwelling in the west lot as well can be replaced with a newer dwelling on the west lot also. The east portion lot will require water and sewer stub in to allow servicing over to the new east lot. For both lots, access is currently provided from the north internal Hamlet Road, which is 4th Street. There is a developed rear lane on the south side of both lots. It is noted that their shed does encroach into the county's laneway there in the south end, so over the property line. So as a condition of approval on a subdivision, it will be required that they have to address that to the satisfaction of the county, which might require either relocating it or removing it or enter into an encroachment agreement if the county is partial to that. So as mentioned, this application does meet the Hamlet subdivision criteria. The lots do slightly exceed the minimum that's required in the hamlet. As part of the referral process, there was no objections or concerns received on it. None of the utility company's requested an easement. As a matter of just a formal process, all this land within the hamlet is flagged for historic resource clearance. We got correspondence back that they're waiving it on this application, so nothing's required in that regard. So with that, with no concerns received and it complying with the bylaw, I have recommended approval to you. This application is also seen to support the county's Hamlet growth initiatives and strategies. Of course, a few years back, we did the Hamlet growth studies for all the hamlets within Lethbridge County, and this aligns with that growth strategy of promoting infill growth within the hamlets where available. So with that, I have recommended approval to you. And it would be on the 4 conditions there on the draft resolution in front of you, the standard that the taxes are paid and up to date, that a development agreement be entered into. That agreement may be used to outline the terms of the obligation of connecting to the Hamlet water and sewer infrastructure. This type of application they can do through either separation of title, which is a kind of a paper subdivision rather than a plan of survey being done, if it's in the acceptable format. And that the 4th condition would just deal with that encroachment of the fence and shed into the rear municipal lane, that's addressed to the satisfaction of Lethbridge County. So with those 4 conditions on there, I've recommended approval to you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Hillary. Any questions from council? Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I'm looking at the site plan here, there appears that there's a small encroachment on the side of the property as well. Is that of any concern to us?
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Kurbis. The side encroachment, given the age of the property and the age of the residents, that would be something that they would have to deal with the adjacent landowner with. It's not a concern of the county because it's not encroaching into any of our properties. Typically, they can enter into an encroachment agreement with that adjacent landowner, or at such time as when they decide to redevelop the parcel, then they would resolve that particular one. So.
Any other questions? Klaus?
Yeah, it looks pretty straightforward further. So I'll move that subdivision application number 2023-0-111 be approved, subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, Klaus. Klaus has moved the recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Klaus has moved that subdivision application 2023-0-111 be approved, subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
Move down. F, department reports. F1, municipal development and infrastructure. One bylaw today. F1.1, bylaw 23-023, redesignate plan 2310510, block 1, lot 3 in the southeast 41123 west 4 from rural commercial to business light industrial. And this is before us today to consider first reading. Hillary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this rezoning application is located on Highway 519, just to the east of Highway 23. It's on a parcel that was more recently subdivided off of that larger commercial title. In talking to the applicant and their desire to develop on this particular parcel, they want to put on some uses that aren't within the rural commercial land use district, in that they want to do some light processing and manufacturing there at some point in time, which isn't obviously, it's more industrial than commercial. So they have, after consultation, they did submit an application to rezone this parcel from rural commercial to business light industrial. The business light industrial district would be able to accommodate their desire for a light industrial development. The business light industrial zoning would also take into consideration the proximity to the adjacent severed farmyard just to the east there. This also does comply with the intermunicipal development plan that we have with the town of Nobleford, in that this area is to be for light industrial and commercial purposes as it develops down the road. So this is a good opportunity for expansion of this particular area for into that light industrial realm. And I did not hear any comments back from the town of Nobleford just yet, but they still have until the time of the public hearing to provide official comments to the county with regards to this application. But with that, that's a bit of background on it. With that, I have recommended that first reading of Bylaw 23-023 be read for a first time. I'll put it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Hillary. Is there any questions from council? Mark?
I would move that bylaw 23-023 be read a first time.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved the recommendation. Bylaw 23-023 be read for a first time. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
Are we okay to go to the next one, Cole, or do we need?
No, I'll speak with it, Mr. Chairman.
That's just fine. Yeah.
Bear with me on this one.
We'll move down then. F2, Corporate Services. F2.1, Commercial and Industrial Municipal Tax Incentive Bylaw 23-024. Cole?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as council knows, on December 1st, 2022, council passed the Commercial and Industrial Municipal Tax Incentive Bylaw. The purpose of the bylaw is to attract new business, new development, and encourage expansion of existing businesses through providing an exemption in municipal taxes. So since that time, some inquiries regarding the bylaw have been made, and administration has determined some clarity is required, specifically under Section 3, with regards to the criteria for the tax incentive bylaw. So essentially, we sought some legal counsel just to provide more clarity based on either expansions that require a large infrastructure contribution from the county, or where we have other agreements in place with our ratepayers. And so the original bylaw, though it gave us the ability to not approve someone for the tax incentive bylaw, it limited our ability, or there was a lack of clarity in some of those things. So we did have the bylaw rewritten with specific changes. So the only changes are to Section 2B, so a definition was added to define an affiliated party. Section 3.1 A and B, there are two new clauses there referring to the assessed person or affiliated party foregoing making an application for the tax incentive if they are or will be receiving other municipal benefit, such as infrastructure. And then an additional clause just adding CAO's consideration of application if other agreements with the applicant already exist. So it is our recommendation that council read the bylaw for the first, second, and third time today. It is not necessary to rescind the previous bylaw as approving this bylaw. It is written and will supersede and rescind the previous bylaw.
Thank you, Cole. Is there any questions from council? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a little bit of clarification. When you get down to the, let's see, Section 3 or 2 definitions, under O, you talk about eligible property and you talk about machinery and equipment. We don't assess that, so how does that work when you go to give a, I'm not sure how that fits in there.
We do assess machinery and equipment.
Oh, I thought the government did that now.
So I apologize. I don't have, Jen wasn't able to attend today, so we do an assessment. There are certain assessments that Les, our tax assessor, will do on M&E, and what is covered by the province versus what Les covers, I would have to seek clarity on that.
Okay. And what, may I?
Yeah, of course.
And underneath the criteria, do you have anything in there about foreign ownership? Because you talk a lot about who owns the property and stuff like that. Is that anything to be concerned about?
We do not. So we do not, thank you. So through the chair to Councillor Hickey, we do not have anything about foreign ownership in here specifically. There are considerations more, the changes to the bylaw considerations were more pertaining to our contribution to infrastructure, so that in the best interest of all of our ratepayers, that if we were making a significant infrastructure contribution, that would be the the factor for consideration as to whether they could or could not apply for the tax incentive bylaw if they meet the other criteria.
I have two more
Yeah,
things,
go ahead.
thank you, sorry. And then consideration of applications, it talks a little bit about a timeline. Is there a timeline to get back or to go through the process, or is it just?
No, so they, thank you. So typically, once the project is fully complete and the assessment, then the applicant or the ratepayer may apply and submit the application. So once it's complete, they can do it. It can be done in the first 2 years, and then it would be processed at the 75%, 50%, and 25% tax reduction or repayment subsequently.
Yeah, I was just wondering about, the way it reads to me is, it sounds like there's a timeline to do it, but I don't really see anything in there indicating you must do it within this period of time.
Thank you. So, Councillor Hickey, can you just specify what section you're looking at?
Sorry. It is underneath number 5, consideration of a application. It talks a little bit about time in there, but is there a timeline, or, like, do they have to apply within a certain amount of time, or does it matter? Or how does that work?
So we did not want to specify it. I mean,
okay.
the discretionary piece around consideration gives us the ability to assess that. I mean, we're in conversation during the assessment period with the applicant or potential applicant at that time around what it will be. And so if there's, for example, if there's a dispute around the assessed value, so we have had that happen where there's a dispute around the assessed value, then we would go through the dispute process, we'd be working with them, and then that would preclude them from applying until that dispute is resolved. And so we do not specify in here what the timeline is for application based on that, so that we have some flexibility should the criteria be met, but there's other considerations. And so this gives us, the CAO consideration component gives us the ability to adjust that based on the situation.
Okay, and my last question is, underneath 6, calculation of the exemption, and it's under B, and the very last part of the paragraph says, should the cost associated with the installation of municipal infrastructure exceed the exemption amount, the exemption shall not apply, and the assessed person shall be responsible to pay the difference between the two. So, is that written in somewhere else? Because if I was reading this, why would I apply for a tax exemption if I could get a higher rebate, say if you paved my road or put the water line in? Have you got something to cover that? Like, if I come in and ask for, say, $100,000 to put the water line in, my tax exemption would only be 80. Why would I apply for this? I'd rather go for the 100,000.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
Sorry, that's
Go ahead.
okay.
Go
I
ahead.
can
Sorry
maybe
to-
provide some
Go
clarification in
ahead.
that example. The county would still, the exemption would still apply, but anything above that would be on the developer. So the 20,000 would be on the developer. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, no, yeah, that's very clear.
Yeah.
It's just, if I was the person that's going to apply for that, and I read this, why would I apply for that? I'd rather come to you and say, do my $100,000 worth of work instead of your $80,000 tax exemption.
So, thank
Is there-
you,
is there
Councillor
a-
Hickey. So the county is not obligated to do that, so that's part of the consideration process. So if the county is contributing the $100,000 for a roadway based on a negotiated development, then the amendments to this bylaw give us the discretion to say whether they do or do not qualify for the tax exemption program, which really is dependent upon what the expansion value is. So the minimum requirement is $500,000, but the difference of an expansion of $1 million to $100 million has obviously different considerations. And so because the county is not obligated, this clause by no means suggests that the county is obligated to pay for that infrastructure, but it does give us the discretionary piece that if we are going to pay for that infrastructure, they may or may not qualify for the tax incentive bylaw based on considerations of the overall development. So this clause does not say that they can come to us and request that we pay for that infrastructure, or that we have to pay for that infrastructure and not apply for the tax incentive bylaw. The tax incentive bylaw, it stands alone as it is, with the 75, 50, and 25% tax rebates in the subsequent years following completion of the expansion.
Yeah, and I understand all that. I just think that it should, somewhere you should have, you couldn't exceed the amount you would put into services or infrastructure would exceed the tax exemption.
All of, thank you, Councillor. All of those are taken on a case-by-case basis. So those are considerations that if we get too prescriptive in this, no two developments are the same. So if we get too prescriptive in the bylaw, it does eliminate our ability to have those. But those are the considerations that we're trying to clarify here, because the other bylaw did not give us that flexibility, or wasn't clear enough to provide us with that flexibility.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That particular clause, as I read it, is basically saying, as I understand it, that if they do apply for the tax incentive bylaw, but there was a significant amount of infrastructure that was paid for by the county, it really says that you wouldn't qualify for it.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Kurbis. Yes, that's correct. So that clause has not changed under this amended agreement. All we've done is add some further clarification items to support that specific clause.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I completely support that. It's just the part I'm struggling a bit with is, when I read it, if I was not to apply for the tax exemption, and I came in and I said I would rather have infrastructure, I think the dollar figure should be tied together. And I realize maybe it shouldn't be in here, but do you have somewhere that has that backup support saying I can't go above the $80,000 or $100,000 towards your infrastructure, rather than the tax?
And I guess my read on that is it was just that really hamstrings us because of the development. If we have a $700 million development, those numbers are going to be different than if it's a.
Oh, yeah. I agree. It's just, if you read this, when I read it, to me it says I could actually apply for infrastructure rather than the tax exemption. So I'm just saying, I don't think that the tax exemption and the infrastructure request, they should be numbers that are tied together.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. I agree with Reeve Campbell. I think that being too prescriptive here, it limits our ability, because no two developments are the same. So if there's a financial contribution that the county makes towards infrastructure, or if a developer chooses to make a financial contribution to infrastructure that the county is putting in place, those are considerations that affect that net dollar amount, or how we go about implementing that. And so to say that, or even the final assessed value and the type of development. So it gets a little bit tricky. So we have to factor in what the final tax collection is on that property, because if we don't take that into consideration, and the county, for example, if the county pays $1 million and they apply for the tax exemption bylaw, and the entire tax collection on that property is $100,000 a year, then we may be in a position where our other ratepayers are subsidizing that specific development, and that is not in the county's best interest necessarily, and so at least from a financial perspective. And so I think by being too prescriptive on the dollars, we really have to lay out every scenario, every tax assessment. A dollar's not necessarily equates to a dollar, because the development and the tax collected vary based on industry, development type, and other considerations. So I do agree we will factor that into the deal, but I do not feel it should be in the bylaw as a reflection of that, because we have other clauses within this agreement that specify our discretion to assess those specific items.
Just one. Eric, did you have yours first?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I could see what's coming forward here, but it's laying it out as clear as we need to get the effect. And yes, companies can come apply for infrastructure. Is it in a bylaw? No. It's case by case for big things such as what's going on currently. So to say, well, yeah, this is your top end, to limit the top end, and say we're gonna miss out on, I don't know, the next big computer something, whatever, pharmaceutical, because we said, yeah, it tops out here. We don't want to hamstring ourselves on it. So I'd actually like to move the bylaw 23-024 for it to be read for the first time.
Thank you, Eric. Eric has moved that bylaw 23-024 be read for a first time. I will open it back up for any discussion. Go ahead, Claus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A real good point of Lauren that he brought up about the foreign investment or the foreign, if somebody comes in that way. To be really clear, are we going to look at that case by case, or are we, because I mean, they should be able to qualify for the incentive, because I mean, that's why we put it out there, to attract people to come and talk to us. So is that going to be case by case too then?
So, thank you, Councillor Vanderveen. So through the chair, every application is case by case. However, the considerations really outlined in the bylaw that would preclude somebody are more pertaining to our financial or infrastructure contributions and the value of that, not necessarily the ownership. So if they meet all the other criteria for application, we would not preclude them from qualifying for the tax incentive bylaw.
Eric has moved that bylaw 23-024 be read for a first time. Is there any further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Claus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that bylaw 20-024 be read as second time.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved that bylaw 23-024 be read for a second time. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Mark?
I'd move that council consider third reading of bylaw 23-024.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved that council consider third reading of bylaw 23-024. Any discussion? I will call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. And third reading. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that bylaw 23-024 be read a third time.
Thank you, John. John has moved that bylaw 23-024 be read for a third time. Is there any further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Cole.
Thank you.
We can move down. Administration. F3, we have one item before us here. F3.1, Village of Stirling ACP granted application, intermunicipal collaboration, Barron's Eureka Warner, FCSS proposal, letter of support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, sorry.
To determine how best to serve residents' needs and reduce social stigma surrounding sports services within the Barron's Eureka Warner region, the Village of Stirling, in partnership with FCSS, has proposed to submit an Alberta Community Partnership, or ACP, intermunicipal collaborative application to conduct a community needs assessment. The project will focus on the root cause of social challenges related to the province's priorities and determine strategies to proactively address these challenges. So, Village of Stirling has requested a motion of support on the joint ACP grant for FCSS to represent the Barron's Eureka Warner region, and is requesting a motion of support in support of the Village of Stirling's Alberta Community Partnership Intermunicipal Collaborative Barron's Eureka Warner FCSS proposal to conduct a region-wide community needs assessment based on FCSS provincial prevention priorities. And I would ask Councillor Hickey to maybe speak to some of the details on this, as he's more familiar than I am, if there's any questions.
Thank you. Well, it's just as it says, it's so that all 16 communities can have their input and see what can be better serve by having an overall look at the whole entire program as it serves the 16 communities. It's just, I think like any other study, it will bring up some key issues that should be looked at and maybe perhaps some that are no longer relevant.
Awesome. Any other questions or discussion from council? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is just a letter of support. This is not something that we're taking lead on or will affect any potential grants that we apply for.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Kurbis. Through the chair, no, doesn't affect. We would have participation in the study and representation and access to the findings if there's any recommendations for Lethbridge County and our partnership with FCSS, but we would not be leading this.
John?
Well, given that, I would like to move that we draft a letter of support to Village of Stirling for their ACP grant.
Thank you, John. John has moved that County Council provide a letter of support to the Village of Stirling regarding their ACP grant proposal. Is there any further discussion? Call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we can move down. There's no attachment for the next two. F3.2, Town of Coaldale ACP grant application letter of support. Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So at our last council meeting, council passed a motion of support for the city of Lethbridge to lead the regional water study in the ACP grant. There was apparently some confusion, so the province had requested that Coaldale lead this study. So in conversations with the city of Lethbridge, they have passed a motion of support for Coaldale to lead the study based on some specific criteria to ensure that their infrastructure is represented. And I would ask that council amends or passes a new motion of support to the town of Coaldale to participate in the ACP water or regional water study on the basis that the city of Lethbridge is a participating municipality.
Thank you, Cole. Go ahead, Klaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I read yesterday or the day before, whatever, after the city had their meeting and they supported that too, but I'm not quite sure, was that in support that they were going to lead it or was it in support for Coaldale?
Coaldale will lead it. However, the city had some considerations that they wanted factored into that study, and so their support was on that basis. And I do know that the city has been involved with Coaldale to review, or prior to the deadline, which I believe is on Monday, October 2nd, to review and amend the grant application to ensure that there's a comprehensive capture of regional water.
And another one, then I did read part of the Medicine Hat that they had the meeting over there, and that MLA Grant still supported that Tabor and Coaldale take the lead on this.
Thank you, Councillor Van der Veen. Through the chair, yes, so at our last meeting, we passed a motion of support for Tabor to lead the wastewater portion. So that still stands, but just because of some of the confusion on the potable water portion, we need to pass a new motion of support to attach to that, essentially to their grant application. And then we would not be leading this, but we would be involved in those decisions or those discoveries and engineering conversations.
Any other questions? So really, we're just a new motion to support Coaldale as the lead, whereas last meeting we had just indicated Lethbridge as the lead, I believe. So just really a naming change.
That's correct.
Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have the motion in front of me, but as Cole stated it sounded very good, and I'd like to move that.
Do you have something to work with, Jeremy? Yeah.
Okay.
Could you read? Do you have it there?
Councillor
Do you have it,
Madison.
Jeremy?
Move that Lethbridge County supports the town of Coaldale's managing partner submission of the 2023-2024 Alberta Community Partnership Grant application in support of the Regional Water Concept Development Study project.
Thank you, Jeremy.
What about the portion as Lethbridge involvement?
Yeah, on the basis the city of Lethbridge is involved.
You happy with that, Eric?
I can work with that.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'll call a question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Moving down.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. If we could just pass a motion on the Village of Stirling ACP grant, I think we said a letter of support, but I don't know that we got an official motion.
Okay.
On that last one. And my apologies, I should have caught that before we moved on.
Well, I was a motion to draft a letter. Does that
Yeah, so we
count?
just need a resolution to support. Yeah, so-
Okay.
My
Okay.
apologies,
Okay.
yeah.
So, as per the request, there was a provided motion where we insert our name, Lethbridge County. So it would be moved by Lethbridge County to approve participating with the Village of Stirling and applying for an Alberta Community Partnership Intermunicipal Collaboration Funding Grant to fund the Barron's Eureka Warner FCSS Community Needs Assessment Project.
Thank you, Mark. Is there any further discussion? I'll call a question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, you can write a letter too, right? F3.3, Nobleford Bulk Water Station Funding Request. Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and apologies for not having a report drafted for this one. It came up late last week. So Nobleford CAO Hutter sent a request to us to support some upgrades to the bulk water fill station. They're having some maintenance issues, specifically the coin operation, and they'd like to upgrade that to like a card-based system. They had requested at that time that the county fund 65% of that upgrade. In review, I did inquire as to whether their bulk water rates factor in any capital recovery or upgrades for maintenance, and if we had any agreements in place and what the utilization of county residents was. They currently do not collect any additional funds for capital recovery, maintenance, or improvement, and they made a guess as to the 65%, but estimated that it was much higher. So Jeremy Wixon and I, the Director of Operations, were able to review this. Our next closest fill stations are in Diamond City and Monarch, and based on the potable water needs in Nobleford, we are quite confident that the majority of our ratepayers are the ones that are utilizing this bulk fill station, and it is a service that we would like to see remain in the community, just as from a proximity standpoint to our ratepayers. However, I did have a conversation with CAO Hutter around moving forward in the maintenance and replacement of that, and made a suggestion that we look for a 50% contribution instead of 65%, and that they benchmark their bulk rates with ours. So they're currently charging $3.20 a cube, and the regional rates, including ours, are $4.50 a cube. And so we suggested that they raise their rates and benchmark with ours, so that in the future that they have money set aside for maintenance and replacement activities, rather than us not having necessarily a lens or being able to forecast what those are. So the ask of council today would be that we support 50% of up to $15,000 in upgrades and maintenance on the bulk fill station in Nobleford, on the basis that moving forward they benchmark their rates and have some capital recovery to maintain that fill station. Their council has already, it's my understanding, has already past support of that, and so that's what they're looking for today.
Thank you, Cole. John? Oh, sorry. Do you have something plus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does that mean this is a one-time deal, but that we're not on the hook for the maintenance beyond this?
So that was the intent. I think that there will probably be a case by case depending on the timing of the request, but my concern with paying the 65% that we're suggesting that we're 65% accountable for that, when really these services should be maintained and funded based on the utility rates. And so Nobleford was in agreement, and they know that they are significantly below regional standards with that. And so the intent is for them to raise rates so that those funds would then service that station going forward. So yes, however, that doesn't suggest that there may or may not be another request depending on the nature of that request.
Any other questions? John, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I very much struggle with requests of this nature because it is infrastructure that is within an urban, that is within our boundaries. But from the standpoint of the county, like the actual county employees, is it utilized by us as the county employees, or is it just utilized by our ratepayers that that may or may not be on the potable water co-ops? Because we looked at a similar request of support late last year for the upgrading of their water collection, or sorry, their lagoon to collect their potable water supply, and turned that down basis on the fact that yes, they are county residents that are on the potable water co-op, a certain number of them are, but it's not specifically our ratepayers that are their customers. Their customers are the people that are utilizing that, and I firmly and very much believe that it should be something that should be factored in, as you said, based on, you know, their charges should have some sort of capital recovery in there so that when it does need to be replaced, it gets replaced. So I don't think I could support any request for additional funding at any rate on that.
Go ahead, Klaus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we have to kind of have this kind of straight, because I don't think the potable water, like the co-op, goes any further than, doesn't even go up to Nobleford and up to that area. So there's a lot of people that are in the county that did not qualify to being on that same system there. So I think we need some clarification on that one, and I see somebody has his hand up there already.
Through the chair to Councillor Vanderveen, there is, the North Co-op has a agreement with the town of Nobleford for supply to about over 100 county residents in the Nobleford Barrens area for regional water, potable water.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This one's a little bit unique too. We do not have an exact proportion of users as to what proportion is from Nobleford versus Lethbridge County. However, based on access to the service, how Nobleford provides water, I think that we are quite confident that the vast majority of their users are county residents. And so I agree with Deputy Reeve Kurbis moving forward, and that's why we suggested the rate increase. I do believe right now that if they were to suspend the service, it would have a minimal effect on Nobleford residents, but it would drastically affect the level of service that we can provide to our ratepayers. And so I think that's why this one's it is a little bit unique, and I completely agree, but I also understand that their lack of foresight puts us, you know, on a capital recovery, puts us in this position, which is not ideal, but the impact to not providing that, I think, outweighs the capital ask.
Go ahead, Eric, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, you nailed it down there. We would hurt real bad if didn't fund it. It got shut down, and now what? And so then it turns into, well, is someone privately going to supply it? Like, we're way better off supporting existing infrastructure. It's a small ask at this time, and also put means in place to keep it from such an ask coming forward again, which by adjusting the rates. And if I see how many sprayer or tanker trucks need to fill up there, and also drinking water, so I completely support it, and I like how it's going forward, and I'd like to move that we fund our, how do we do it? We don't fund it, we support the funding request.
Yep.
Up to $15,000.
50% of up to
50% of up to $15,000, and that the water rates come in line with the region.
Do you have something there, Chairman?
Move that Lethbridge County provide 50% of up to $15,000 for the Nobleford bulk water station upgrade costs on the condition that the town of Nobleford match bulk water rates of Lethbridge County and create a capital replacement plan for future maintenance.
Go ahead, Eric.
Another question, to our CAO, is 15 enough? Is 30 enough for a project like that?
Thank you, Councillor Van Essen. So through the chair, they did provide a quote for, it was 14,900 and change, and so they have a quote to do the work that they need. So we're operating on the assumption that they can proceed with that quote.
Jeremy?
Just for a little bit of specifics, it should mirror the county's existing utility rate for bulk water stations versus just saying regionally. Because, I mean, our water rate compared to what the MD of Tabor is charging, or the County of Newell is charging, or Willow Creek is charging, are quite different across the board, so.
Okay, and it does say that, doesn't it? Yep, okay.
Okay.
Any other, so, sorry, go ahead.
And then just to be specific as for where that funding's coming from, utility reserve.
From the utility, to be funded from the utility reserve? You're good, Chair?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just for clarity, Jeremy, so this is gonna be about the same rate as that Diamond City and Monarch have?
So in our current utility rate bylaw, our truck fill station bulk rate is $4.72 per cube. Sorry, I think I had mentioned $4.50, that was previous year's rate. It's currently $4.72 per cube, and that's our standard for this year. I will be bringing forward and looking at rate increases and evaluating what our truck fill stations should be charging further with recent increases from the city of Lethbridge and so on. So my recommendation is that it mirrors essentially exactly what ours is, because
Okay.
otherwise.
Thank you, because that was my point. I think we should treat them all the same that way, yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Van Essen, could I recommend a friendly amendment that the water rate align with the county's bulk rate?
I think we have that already amended.
Do we have that in there? Yeah.
Not current, but yeah. Addressed, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Zoric has made that motion. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Moving down, F4, Public Operations, F4.1, 2024 Provincial Ag Service Board Conference Sponsorship Opportunity. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I can move forward. Good morning, Council. So before you today, currently the 2024 Agricultural Services Board Conference is scheduled for the city, well, it's going to be within the city of Lethbridge at the new exhibition grounds here coming up in 2024. The dates for that conference are January 22nd to 25th, and this presents an opportunity for us to not only host this event, as we are the lead municipality essentially in this area, but also to do a showcase, or a potential for a showcase event and a networking event for our municipality. So just a little bit of background on this. Annually, the ASB hosts the Provincial ASB Conference, a 3-day event for approximately 400 to 500 people, including ASB members, councils, and municipal administration, representing the 69 Alberta municipal districts and counties throughout the province. During this event, the ASB members gather and bring forward issues and vote on provincial or federal regulation or resolutions affecting the agricultural industry. The South Region is hosting this year's event, as I said before, and it will be held at the newly built Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center, which Lethbridge County was a key contributor to. With the conference in January, the AAAF, which is the Alberta Agricultural Fieldmen Association, are basically trying to make sure they've got all their sponsorships in line prior to the event, and this was essentially put forward as what would Lethbridge County be willing to sponsor for this type of event. Now, there is a brochure that is attached that kind of outlines some of the sponsorship things. This is very similar to an RMA conference in that in that mold. Essentially, then basically it provides different tiers of sponsorship throughout this. So a couple of the options that we looked at was whether or not, and in the alternative pros and cons, we looked at whether or not we would look to host a networking event because we are the host municipality essentially for this event, or whether or not we would be willing to be banquet or lunch or different sponsorship levels for the event in and itself. So the costing portion is our estimates. As far as option one, for $25,000 to be put into the ASB budget for 2024 to essentially be hosting an event for conference attendees. Now this could be extended obviously to a larger extent to include rural partners, rural collaborators, whether that be other municipal councils, other municipal staff, as well as other key collaborators in the area, whether that be Alberta beef, pork, dairy. I mean, there's lots of contributors to this area. The county has not hosted this conference since the 1990s. I'm not sure if anyone here has actually attended it back then. Was it the Lethbridge Lodge? So anyway, it's been a while since Lethbridge has hosted this. We are the largest agricultural producer for net dollars in the province of Alberta, as we have seen through our Saracon reports previously. So we are very much one of the largest economic drivers of agriculture in the province. So the recommendation I have before you today is more of a decision as well. My recommendation is that Lethbridge County hosts a hospitality event for attendees in the amount of $25,000 as sponsorship for the 2024 Provincial Ag Service Board Conference. This would be the introductory event, essentially on the opening night of the conference, which is typically very well attended, from my knowledge from previous conferences that I've attended, and then from hearing from other people that attend these events as well.
Thank you, Jeremy. I would open it up to Cole. Did you want to add anything, or?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All I would say is that I think this is a real opportunity to showcase the region, especially the agri-food hub that Lethbridge County has made a significant contribution to as well. It'll be well attended from other RMA members, and in discussions with them, it may help us bring other events to the region. And so from a value proposition, administration feels that the $25,000 will help showcase the event more, build some strategic partnerships and relationships more than the standard platinum sponsorship.
Thank you, Cole. I'd open it up to council for any discussion. Clerk Claus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you for that, Cole. I think that that was appropriate, because I think that, with having this come here, I think I'm really in favor of it, and even if the costs are going to be a little bit higher, I think we should be able to absorb those too, because I think this is an event that we don't want to have, we don't want to look like Dutchmen here anyway, so.
Anyone else have any? Eric, please.
Thank you. So I'm struggling with the part of what do we get for our dollar, and advertising is always not easily measurable on such a scale. And what are we doing for showcasing this? Like they're in the region, they're seeing the region, they're coming, whether we're top sponsor or a banquet sponsor or something. Where's the difference that they're eating and drinking the evening or the supper? Is it getting us anything? Are we getting to do multimedia extra throughout it, so that way, hey, you know what, we can really put it in their face, versus having a little banner at the start of a buffet line and say, yeah, this is Lethbridge County, thanks for coming, we're proud of our building, and we appreciate it. Or is there some value there that look at what we've done, what we can do, and why we're amazing?
Do you want to respond to that, or do you want to? Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Red. No, I hear what Eric's saying. I think the advantage to having a hospitality suite or a room is where Lethbridge County is the focus. You can focus on, you're talking directly, you're getting FaceTime with people. If we sponsor a breakfast or a lunch or a supper, and we've seen that at all the conferences we've gone, there's a little sign that says so-and-so sponsored this, and you go, okay, well, so what value? And this is specific to the county because it's in our backyard, gives us the opportunity to interact directly with business leaders, all the members of this organization too, but also the community, and get our name out there and have that discussion about who we are, what we bring, and just the value that this region brings to, or that the county brings to the province too. So I think it's a good opportunity. With you, the price, when you see that number, you kind of go, ooh. But I think that's part of doing business, and if we want to be progressive and get out there and get our name and get the county out there, it's an opportunity, especially when it's our own backyard, right? So I like I say, the dollars are a little concerning, but I think at the end of I think it's a good proposal, and I would support it.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see more value in doing the $25,000 hospitality than I do doing the banquet in the Platinum, because of the exposure that you get doing the banquet in the Platinum is less impactful. This is one of those situations where I fully agree with you, is that, what is the value on that? And this is one of those times where spending a little bit more money actually gives you a higher presence, and I think the return on that is far greater than spending the slightly less money and doing a banquet and Platinum sponsorship, because as I've seen, the banquet sponsorship and the Platinum sponsorship, they are just very small little signs, whereas this would be the Lethbridge County room. The impact is far greater.
Go ahead, Klaus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I agree with the other speakers. And I think that, like I said, the exposure that we get, and we're one of the first big conferences that are going to be there in Lethbridge. So I think it's setting a kind of a standard, like what we think we should be doing, what we going to be expecting further on from the Lethbridge exhibition, and I think it's going to be well worth it, because the first evening too, I mean, we're going to have the politicians there, and these are the people that are going to be there that first evening, and that's when you're going to do a lot of talking, a lot of people, and having the experience of like going to Grand Prairie last year and the other ASBs that we had before. Definitely the first evening is one of the biggest ones that people are looking at, and that sets the tone for the whole thing. So I would like to recommend that the Lethbridge County host a hospitality event for attendees in the amount of $25,000 sponsorship for the 2024 Provincial Agriculture Service Board Conference.
Thank you, Klaus. Yeah. So Klaus has moved the recommendation. I'd open it up for further discussion. I've got Eric and Lauren. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Saying the same thing I'm saying, where's their value? And I'm not saying I'm not going to support it, but where's their value? And so this is going to be quite pointed to our staff. Are we prepared to pull off a first-class event and put the effort in and showcase it and do it? And I have the confidence we can, but let's make sure we really make this utilize the tools that are available at such an amazing facility to really pull it off to a first-class event, and absolutely support it. And the motion for 25, you got to also look at it at least. You don't cap it there, because we know it's going over. So thank you.
You want to make that amendment?
Cool.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We should set an upset amount, and we can always amend it if it does come in, within range. 25 is the minimum, really, to host in Lakeview Room, and we do feel quite confidently that we can pull off a first-class event. However, in conversations, we're still working through what the limitations are from a catering, what their contracts are in place. And so we would like to find a way to really demonstrate and showcase our local producers, if we can. And that is something that will come with a higher cost associated with it versus a bulk catering rate. We again, I want to be careful what we say here because we have not got specifics on exactly what those catering restrictions would be. But that's something that I think it's another way, we talk about value, it's another way that we can give back to our community and our ratepayers that we represent, so.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just two questions. One, where would the money come from? And two, that's $50 a person. Would that, what do you get for $50? Like, is there extra rent on the room, or is it for just the food, or I'm just kind of struggling with that cost.
So some of the ballpark numbers are, it's about $2,000, I think it's $2,500 just for the room rental alone, for the Lakeview room, which is their biggest kind of meeting room, salon type area. And then the estimates for food, they range anywhere from $20 to $40 per. I mean, this wouldn't be something we would look at like a plated banquet type dinner. This would be finger foods, those types of activities. But there's a range of platforms they have essentially for what those costs can be, right? I mean, veggies is different than having meat. So, I mean, there's a cost difference between those. And then that also assumes, beverages and some of those items. Based on the estimates from the exhibition, they felt that this was probably in the ballpark range, but as CAO Beck specified, if we bring in some regional components, then we have to negotiate some other catering options as well.
Do you have a funding source identified, Jeremy? I know it says in the budget, the upcoming budget, I believe, but.
This could be funded from the ASB reserve, or this could be just strictly approved through the operating budget. Has two options.
Klaus, do you feel comfortable with the dollar amount, or do you think it's at this time, should we set a higher upset value or a maximum amount, or do you feel comfortable with the motion you've made?
I think that we can do what just Cole suggested, just go with the 25,000 for now. And if we do need more, then we can amend that to put more money into it.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Yeah, go ahead, John.
Do we want to add into that where the fund's coming from? Either budget or ASB reserve?
I would leave that to your discretion. Would you like to identify a funding source?
Maybe I should talk to staff and where would the funding come from?
Yeah. My recommendation is it comes from the ASB reserve. I mean, we have over 100,000 essentially in that reserve. I mean, this is an ASB event, and this is about agriculture in the area. So
Okay,
I think
then
that's
I'll,
the appropriate funding resource for this.
Then I'll add to the motion that it comes from the ASB reserve.
Thank you, Klaus.
Thank you.
Any other further, you did make the motion, though, right, Klaus? Klaus has moved to Lethbridge County host a hospitality event for attendees in the amount of $25,000 as sponsorship for the 2024 Provincial Agricultural Service Board Conference to be funded from the ASB Reserve. Is there any further discussion? I think I would just echo along Eric's point. I have no doubt that the staff at Lethbridge and District Exhibition, the facility, I have no doubt that we can host a first-class event. That's not my concern, but my concern is that we need to be more than Eric said, a banner at the beginning. When you walk through the doors, we need to have, whether it's interactive, if we're including some of our, some of the industry that we have here, if that's, multimedia, if that's videos playing, slideshows playing, we do need to be somewhat immersive, but I guess would be my concern. It can't just be signs. I think that was kind of my thought anyways.
With that said, I fully agree with you, and I think that that is what, anyway, that's what I got in the back of my mind about, when we do an event like this, and the organizing committee that's going to be doing that with staff then, and that we're going to work, because we're not doing that, we talked about a couple of years ago, doing that summer event, like to display what we all have in the county and everything like that. And if we can combine that in doing that here, I fully agree with you guys that we gotta make a showcase out of this, what we're made of here in the South, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry I belabored that, but yes. So the recommendation, Lethbridge County hosts a hospitality event for attendees in the amount of $25,000 as sponsorship for the 2024 Provincial Ag Service Board Conference to be funded from the ASB Reserve. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, council.
We move down. We have two pieces of correspondence before us today. Item G, correspondence. Our first is the Coaldale District Emergency Services 2023 Annual Awards Ceremony invitation. So that's rather straightforward. I know myself, I've attended the last several years. I know Councillor Hickey, Councillor Sayers, I know others have attended in the past. So there is that before us. If you'd like to attend, it's a nice event. It's a nice way to honor those firefighters and emergency service providers out of the town of Coaldale. If you would like to attend, coordinate with Candace and she can RSVP on your behalf. And the second one, Ag Service Board position statement. So this came out via email, I believe. Cole, do you want to speak to this at all, or? Jeremy?
This is primarily in reference to the agricultural extension program. So currently, right now, we're one of several, but not all municipalities receive the rural extension grant. So we are one of the few municipalities that does get it. This is just more of a position statement. The question was asked about whether or not this was a program that needed to be obviously extended further. The provincial ASB grant currently expires, the timeline on it expires in 2024. So the prime grant, we just received an increase back to prior 2019 levels. It went from 123,000 per year to 166,000 per year. The rural extension portion was left at 90, I think it's 90,000 or 91,000 per year. That's basically we have a position specifically that is filled for that role within the ASB. So this is just essentially asking the question about the value that's seen within that extension program and continual support for that program.
From your position, what would your opinion be on that matter? I think we knock it out of the park in Lethbridge County as far as extension. Just seeing what other like you said, it is a limited number of municipalities that participate in that. But from my perspective, what we have done with that, how we've leveraged those dollars, has been really impressive. What's your take on this?
I think it's very vital to the region. I believe what we do right now is exceptional. Could we even take it further? I believe we can still take it even further than it essentially is right now. Especially with, and then in consideration of the province has downsized a lot of their agricultural extension and their staffing period. So this is the heart of agriculture in Alberta right now. The numbers show it, the intensity of what goes on in this area. You know, McCain's expansion, Cavendish is here. The extent of agriculture in this area is exceptional, and I think we need to continue to further support these areas of extension.
Thanks, Jeremy. Klaus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we had an email of this before, and that went to all the Agriculture Service Board members and also the ones at large. And I got contacted by two of them from at large, and they asked, is council just going to make a decision on that? Because they felt that it should probably be brought to the ASB board, and then we should be making a recommendation to council.
Yes, correct. And I apologize. This correspondence came through in July and got lost in the shuffle of all of our summer operations and didn't get forwarded on to the ASB members and the at-large members. This was our current fieldman did fill out, Gary Sechrist did fill out the survey because he's probably the voice essentially of that, and it will be a discussion point that is brought to our next ASB meeting, which is on October 26th as well. There was lots of support from the at-large members though for that.
So can we?
We don't need a motion or anything.
Can we refer this to the ASB board, that we discuss that further and then make a recommendation to council?
Correct.
That's already it. That's in the works. Yeah, awesome. Yep. Anything further on this item? If not, I don't believe we have anything else on our agenda. Morris?
Yeah, I don't know what I gotta do. Also, that could be a problem.
Morris has moved for adjournment at 10:20 a.m. this morning. Thank you, staff. Thank you, council. Thank you for everything.